So, as I've said before, there are a number of myths that the Chinese try to promote in order to support many of their rather outlandish claims in the East and Southeast Asia region. And I'm not even going to get into Central Asia and South Asia. It's just enough to deal with East and Southeast Asia. But a lot of these, of course, have to do with Taiwan because China has this crazy idea that Taiwan is a part of its territory. And so another myth that the Chinese use in order to try to convince people that Taiwan is a part of its territory is that it says that the United Nations has stated that Taiwan is a province of China and that there is a resolution called Resolution 2758 in which the General Assembly states that Taiwan is a province of China. They also state that the UN Secretariat has also ruled. And sometimes you even hear them say, oh, there's legislation or there are documents that state that Taiwan should be returned to China, that they are United Nations documents. That's entirely false. Yeah, there is no such document from the United Nations that states that Taiwan should be returned to China. It's hard to be returned into a state that you were never part of. But be that as it may, there is no such document. Also, the United Nations is not a global lawmaking body. The United Nations operates on the consent of the member states. It acts on the consent that the member states have granted to the United Nations. And even then, the United Nations still must operate within international law and must respect the rights of states, whether they are members of the United Nations or not. Yeah. And also, they have to respect their own charter. Now, I'll talk about the charter issues with Taiwan another day. So, what do the Chinese say? Well, there is a resolution. It's Resolution 2758. It dates back to October 25, 1971. I don't know if the date was intentional or not, because October 25th is the date that the Chinese claim that in 1945, Taiwan was retroceded, okay, to the Republic of China. Yeah, again, and that is actually a holiday that is celebrated by the KMT in Taiwan today. That is actually also false. That's another topic I should address on another day. So, Resolution 2758 was proposed by Albania, which by this time was a close ally of China. There are only four clauses in the resolution. Now, normally resolutions are divided into perambulatory clauses and operative clauses. This one is not done in the same format as normal. Now, the first three are most certainly perambulatory in nature, while the fourth is operative in nature. So let's look at each of the four clauses one by one. Clause 1 states, quote, recalling the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Okay, that's actually a very standard, okay, phrase to operate many um, United Nations resolutions. So, recalling the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, would someone please remind China to recall those principles? Because it seems like what China is doing in Japanese territory right now and in Philippine territory right now doesn't really fall in line with the principles of that charter. But let's move on, because that's actually not a very consequential clause here. Clause number 2. Quote, considering the restoration of the lawful rights of the People's Republic of China is essential both for the protection of the Charter of the United Nations and for the cause that the United Nations must secure under the Charter. Unquote. Well, how can you restore lawful rights of a state that had never even been a part of the United Nations in the first place? When the United Nations was founded in 1945, the Republic of China was a founding member of the United Nations. Okay? Not the People's Republic of China. The People's Republic of China had never had a seat before on the United Nations. So how can you restore something that never existed in the first place? But again, also notice Taiwan is still not yet mentioned. Third clause, also perambulatory, recognizing that the representatives of the government of the People's Republic of China are the only lawful representatives of China to the United Nations, and that the People's Republic of China is the one of the five permanent members of the Security Council. Now, that actually was not, in fact, the case at that point. If you look at the UN Charter, the Republic of China was in fact one of the five members of the Security Council. Now, you could, of course, argue, and actually rather legitimately, in my view, that the People's Republic of China was in fact the legitimate continuator state of the Republic of China because all of the territory that was legally part of the Republic of China, with the exception of some very small islands off the coast of Fujian, were actually under the control and had been for decades by now. Under the control of the People's Republic of China. So I'm not even going to argue that point. The People's Republic of China was and is the legitimate government of China. I'm not going to argue that point. I fully agree and accept that point. What I don't accept is Taiwan's not a part of China. Yeah, that's the problem here. And there is still nothing in this resolution yet, in these three perambulatory clauses, that even mentions Taiwan, let alone states that Taiwan is a part of China. The fourth of the clauses is actually operative in nature, though it doesn't follow the normal format of perambulatory and operative clauses in a UN resolution. But let's look at the fourth clause. Decides to restore all its rights to the People's Republic of China and to recognize the representatives of its government as the only legitimate representatives of China to the United Nations and expel forthwith the representatives of Jiang Jieshi, from the place which they unlawfully occupy at the United Nations and in all organizations related to it. I have no argument with any of that. None whatsoever. Chiang Kai-shek was a thug. He was a brutal dictator. In 1971, Taiwan was under his brutal dictatorial rule, and the White Terror was still very much ongoing in Taiwan at the time. Okay? There's even a holiday today in Taiwan, 228, okay, that commemorizes the events that started on February 28th, 1947, and culminated in the White Terror during the Jiang Dynasty. So, notice again, though, Taiwan is not mentioned. Not even Republic of China is not even mentioned in the resolution. Again, much less Taiwan. Neither Taiwan nor the Republic of China are even mentioned in this resolution. Just Chiang Kai-shek. Okay? And as far as I'm concerned, Chiang Kai-shek did not represent Taiwan. He, in fact, unlawfully repressed in violation of the UN Charter, in violation of clauses 75 to 77 of the UN Charter, which stated that the peoples of the territories taken from enemy states should have their populations consulted. He didn't do that. He repressed those populations. And because many of the local people of Taiwan spoke Japanese, they weren't allowed to have any government positions whatsoever. And they killed tens of thousands of Taiwanese in the late 1940s and into the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, imprisoned them in jails, disappeared them overnight, put them on Green Island, which many of them never returned from. It was a brutal dictatorship, every bit as brutal as the one in China. The whole idea of Taiwan being free China at the time was a disgusting farce. Notice, though, Taiwan is not mentioned, Republic of China is not mentioned, and Chiang Kai-shek is mentioned, but he was actually unlawfully imprisoning the Taiwanese people at the time. The second part of the Chinese argument here, it's a little bit more convincing, but not a lot, is it states that the United Nations Secretariat does in fact use the phrase Taiwan Republic, province of China. That's actually correct. It does use that phrase. The Secretariat does. Now, that's not based on any UN General Assembly resolution, though it claims to be. It claims to use the text of the resolution that I just read aloud to you all as the justification for stating that Taiwan is province of China. But listen again, or look on Wikimedia. Look on any like wiki source, any online source. You can find the text of the declaration anywhere. It's easy to find. You will not find Taiwan once. It does not say anything about Taiwan status. It just talks about the China representation seat, which I'm not even going to argue. It does belong in the hands of the People's Republic of China. The People's Republic of China is the legitimate government of China. Period. Full stop. It's just that Taiwan is not a part of it. So, it does use Reso 2458, 2758, sorry, as the justification. This was actually, even just 2 months ago in November, confirmed by Stefan Dujarric, yeah, who is a spokesperson at the United Nations Secretariat, They cite memos by the Office of Legal Affairs in 2007 and 2010 that repeat the same thing. Once again, though, they only refer to the resolution from 1971, which doesn't mention Taiwan at all. They don't have any other legal rationale. Nothing. Zero. Zip. No legal rationale whatsoever in their claims that Taiwan is a part of of China. Okay, nothing, no, zero, zip, no legal rationale whatsoever. In fact, China never actually ruled Taiwan. When China was ruled by the Manchus started coming to Taiwan, had controlled parts of Taiwan, a lot of the western coastal plain, not very much of the east. And in fact, in 1871, again, this is a discussion for another day, but in 1871, in the 1870s, the Qing even admitted that much of Taiwan lay outside of their control. They admitted this to the Japanese at the Mudan incident in the very southern reaches of Taiwan. They didn't have control. They didn't have control over Mudan, yeah, which is near the southern tip of Taiwan on the east coast. So, the United Nations Security Council has also never opined on the matter, and the case has never been brought to the ICJ or to any other judicial organ. None. Zero. Zip. I would love to see this go to the ICJ because China's claim is pathetically weak. Yeah, which is one of the reasons why, of course, China won't consent to it going to the ICJ. Because China knows that, like with the South China Sea arbitration with the Philippines, with the Republic of the Philippines, in 2016, they lost badly because the law and history does not support their case. Also, the United Nations only has authority over member states, only has authority over states that voluntarily join the organization. And even then, it doesn't have any sovereign authority over those states, except for what authority they consent to, including ICJ jurisdiction. As I have noted in previous videos, for example, when Argentina refused ICJ jurisdiction. So, there is zero legal basis for China's claims. China has never ruled Taiwan. China claims the ancient times theory, which I'll talk about in a future video. Manchus never controlled all of Taiwan. They controlled much of the west. They controlled a little bit of the east. They didn't control the center at all. The mountains were completely, totally out of their control. And they ceded it in a ratified treaty in 1895. No ratified treaty after that gave or assigned any rights to Taiwan over Taiwan to China, whether it be the PRC, ROC, or whatever fictitious entity you want to create. It did not happen. And if you look at the Charter of the United Nations, again, topic for another day, you would actually see very clearly that the Taiwanese have the right to self-determination, that Taiwan is not part of China, and that Taiwan has the right to chart its own course.